This is the Lincoln Journal-Star editorial board interview with Bob Rauner. He is a member of the Lincoln Public Schools School Board, and he is running again for a seat in District 6. Bob, thank you for joining us today. Real quickly, we've got two videoless community editorial board members with us, but I'm just going to ask them to introduce themselves so we're all friends at the start of this. Robin, you want to go first?
I'm Robin Eschliman, Eschliman Commercial Real Estate in the Grow Lincoln Show, and I'm one of the community members.
All right, Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike James. I'm also a community member and on the editorial board this year, starting this year.
All right, thank you. And I am the editor of the Journal-Star, and anybody who watches many of these videos will be tired of me quickly. So I'm going to shut up and get this thing going with our candidate, Bob. The first question is kind of a way for you to introduce yourself. And it's one that you can take any direction you'd like. You are a member of the school board, but I'm still going to ask you, why do you want to keep doing this? And what experiences and attributes have qualified you and continue to qualify you to serve on the school board?
Okay. Well, a couple of reasons. One is sort of a service. As a Lutheran, you're supposed to give back and for what you've received, essentially. My three daughters went to East Ridge, Leffler, and Southeast High School and got great educations that gave them a good launching pad. We literally stayed in Lincoln because despite numerous good job offers, I didn't want to take my kids out of LPS. And so partly it's to give back. And then a lot of what I do in my day job interacts a lot. Healthcare and education have a lot in common, especially the public health aspects. And so a lot of what I do is very transferable to LPS. And I spent 15 years doing various volunteer things with LPS, partly first through my kids at East Ridge Elementary. My wife and I helped run the science fair, for example, and we were on the wellness committee. Then I was on some district boards. We were part of I was on the parent committee that interviewed Steve Joel, for example, and the other competitors. And then I even did some outside data work with LPS on their health and fitness statistics and correlating with academic achievement. We even published a study in the Journal of Pediatrics on it. It gave me a really good window into what LPS did and needed to do. And I think some of my day job skills transfer very well into ways we could make LPS even better. All
right. Well, you felt the need to give back because you had students and you serve on the school board and did lots of things. I worked the baked potato bar at the show choir, Spartan Spectacular. Yes, we chose different routes. Yeah. This issue has come up in our district. It's a national issue. What role should parents play in education at an administrative level? You know, you've got volunteers in schools and things like that, but lots of people want to speak out at a different level. What should parents be doing? What's your vision for that?
Well, there's lots of layers to that. I mean, it first starts with their own kids. I mean, there's only so much the schools can do. The schools can't do it all. So parents need to be engaged, starting with their own kids, supporting homework and education and not letting them spend too much time on social media, things like that. And then the next layer goes to their own school. If you think things need to improve, have you been involved at your own school? Have you served the potato bar or been on the PTA or on the science fair? And I think when you learn those things at your own school, that gives you a launch pad to do more. So if you think things need to be changed at the district level, start talking to your elected official, for example. So I've met with all three of my prior elected board members before I went on the board when I had an issue. I talked to them. I talked to Lily Larson. I talked to Katie Stevens. I talked to Matt Schulte as a community role. So first meet with them. I think that's the biggest mistake people make. Sometimes they go straight to the school board meeting. That's just comment. That's a monologue, not a dialogue. And so you need that interaction. And so start with your school board member and or the district leadership to figure out what the rest of the story is. And sometimes it's not just the parents, it's the kids themselves. Recently, we've had some, to me, really great examples of kids advocating for a change in policy. There's a group of kids at East, for example, trying to change how we've dealt with the recent suicides. And they've been very good about studying the issue, going through the chain of command, figuring out all the issues before going to the school board meeting. And so I think that it's heartening to me to see the kids actually doing better than a lot of adults at it. So,
okay. So we're 2 questions into our 6 questions. You're setting speed records, but this one might, feel free to take your time on this one.
Okay.
What are the most pressing facility and staffing needs that LPS is facing?
Okay. Facilities, actually, we're in a good situation. We passed the largest school bond in our history a couple of years ago. Timing couldn't have been better. We passed it before the pandemic hit, which actually led to some under budget things as people weren't sure that due to the uncertainty. A lot of people, we got really good bids on a lot of facilities. So our facilities are at this point getting to be in top-notch shape. Not only have we built the 2 new high schools and a new elementary school, we've redone everything from indoor air quality projects to sporting facilities. And so from a facility standpoint, LPS is in a really good shape. And that's not just the last school bond. I mean, we've had decades of good planning. I think our last 3 school bonds have passed on 2-to-1 margins because they've been well fed off, very well done. Even from sustainability, every school now has ground sourced heat pumps, which has kept our utility bills flat, even though we've grown. So we've done a lot of good things from that standpoint. I think our biggest challenge is the staffing side of things, and everybody in the whole economy is running into this. There's just not enough young people to hire, unfortunately. We really have to work on the pipeline of teachers coming in. We need a diversity of teachers. We want, kids want teachers that look like them too, but that's a long-term thing. Part of that, there's some burnout. It's been a tough couple of years, so we have to address that. We have to make sure that we have a very good work environment. Lincoln Public Schools, although we've not struggled as bad as other districts, partly because I think we have done a job with our environment compared to others. But it's going to be a little harder to recruit in the future. And so that's going to come to benefits and salaries. And there's that tension. Everybody wants lower property taxes, but we may have to pay our teachers more too to maintain our workforce. And so there's a big tension there. Those are not going to be easy decisions, but there's lots of things we can do. One of the areas people always talk about, cutting the fat, making things more efficient. There's only one big area of the budget where I think we could save a lot of money, and that's actually in healthcare costs. About 16% of the LPS budget goes in either directly or indirectly into healthcare. We can lower that. Happens to be what I do in my day job, actually. So I think we could lower our healthcare costs 10-15%, and any savings there could go to teacher salaries and or lowering property taxes.
When you say healthcare, are you thinking benefits for employees, or are you thinking expenses related to students, or both?
No, the employee healthcare costs.
Okay.
So, we have 8,000 staff plus their families. That's, $76 million worth of healthcare that is provided to them. And it one way or the other comes out of the LPS budget. We can lower that, actually. And there's some really good examples. And that's something we're working on right now.
Okay. Well, you mentioned the magic 2 words, property taxes, and you'll have a different perspective from the inside that somebody who's not an incumbent might have. Evaluate how you think LPS is doing as stewards of taxpayer money, and what are your thoughts about property valuations going up? Should the levy be coming down? What needs to happen?
Okay. Well, as far as stewardship, do we use the money we get effectively? And I think we do a very good job at that. I mean, we have top-notch facilities for what we've spent, but we built them to last. They're very efficient. If you look at our educational outcomes, if you look at our demographics, we overachieve compared to our demographics. We're not going to do quite as good as Millard, but we have a lot more kids on poverty and a lot more special ed than Millard, though. But when you control for that, we actually overperform based on the money spent. So I think people can be confident that the money we spend is spent correctly and effectively. Now, some will say, though, but property taxes are still too high, right? And I'd say, yes, they are, but people don't realize why they're high. And the reason why they're high is because the state keeps cutting its state ed every year to us. And so our state funding has gone down $32 million in 5 years. And it's because of the state education formula. That's probably the biggest things people don't realize is, so they'll say, oh, you're going to get valuations are going up a lot, and they are. And I understand that. I write that check for my house too, so I understand that. However, what people don't realize, we don't get a windfall because let's say it ends up being $25 million more in our budget. What's going to happen is the state education formula is going to take it right back out. They're going to cut our state education based on existing law. Now, there is a chance that Governor Pillen has been, I give him a lot of credit. He has met with our leadership, I think at least 7 times, talking to them, well, how could you fix this? And I think the proposal in this that's coming out of state could actually help that. And so, so let's say our valuations and our revenue comes up 25 million, they may not take it all back. And if they don't take it all back, then yes, we can give it back to the community and property tax cuts by lowering our levy, for example. And our levy has been going down. People may not realize that. It's not as much as some would like, but it has been going down gradually, partly because of our facilities. There's the school bond plus another one called QC Puff that gets a little more complicated. But that overall levy has been dropping over the last 5 years. And so the levy is not going up. Now, valuations are, of course, so the net amount goes up. But the biggest people don't realize the state literally takes it back. So we don't get to keep it. We have to save it up because, they're going to take it back next year. But that could change. And that's under the control of the state legislature, not the school board. So.
Okay, and then you sort of got to the second part. I was curious about your thoughts on the direction the legislature and the governor were headed with school funding. Is there anything else you wanted to add on to what you've already said?
Well, I think this is the first time that any of us can remember that it's been a really interactive process. And again, I give the Governor Pillen a lot of credit for to actually studying the issue and finding out what the issues are. Like I talked to Liz Standish, we were literally in the trajectory where in 10 years, we could end up with no state aid, just like some rural districts actually due to current trends. And by making the state commit that no matter what, we're going to give at least $1,500 per kid, and we're going to fully fund special ed for the first time ever, that actually potentially stops that long-term trajectory where we could end up with no state aid for our schools. And, special education, people to underestimate how big a budget perspective that is. That's, I think last I saw was 16% of the LPS budget is special education. And you have to do that. You have to take care of every kid. And ours is higher than typical, partly because people bring their kids into our district because we have really good special education. And so people also don't realize how many kids come into us from others because we just offer stuff others don't provide. So like, for example, even the Career Academy, there are kids from Pius and Lincoln Lutheran that go to our Career Academy, for example. There are homeschool kids that also take advantages of those services. So there are things beyond just the full-time enrolled LPS services that we provide that people sometimes don't realize.
All right. Well, this next question kind of shifts gears. Over the years, we've written about it. It's been an issue, issues of officers in schools, issues about the fair application of school discipline. And then periodically, you have incidents that, raise concerns about student and teacher safety in schools. How do you think LPS is performing? What changes do you think need to be made, or is everything, just running the way it ought to be?
I think if you look at the local data, we're doing a good job. Some people see a headline because of something that happened, in Philadelphia and assume that's the way it is the whole world over. If you look at the stuff we put in place in Lincoln, I think we've done what we're doing is not what other schools are doing. It's different. And I think it's actually very well designed. Our school resources officers go through a lot of additional training, and they're not there to look for crime. They're there to prevent stuff and to help kids go on a different path. And they don't get involved until the school staff or the principal brings them in, honestly. And mostly it's more of a mediation role and a prevention role. They're not there to, quote, increase the school to prison pipeline. That's not their role. And I think they're doing a good job with it. And then the other thing is, I think we have top-notch school security. The plans in infrastructure, I think Joe Wright does an amazing job. And I've had personal experience with that because things got pretty contentious during COVID. We had to have board security things where he had to talk through us some things. And it was really helpful having someone with Joe's experience in that background. Here recently, unfortunately, we had a 5th grader bring a gun to school, but within minutes of the school being aware of it, it was in their possession. The police were there. It was dealt with very, very quickly. And we've had numerous incidents of threats, people bringing weapons, crimes nearby, where we have a very, very fast response time. I credit a lot of that with Joe, the interactions and how well they integrate with our police department, fire and rescue, how they coordinate their radios, their controlled access to the schools, the things that people saw go wrong in other districts. We literally have all the stuff in place that those other places should have had in place. Now, unfortunately, there's only so much we can do. There's no perfect system, and sort of turning into your school into a fortress, which you also don't want to do, because people don't realize that your school has to be a welcoming environment for kids. You can't make it look like a fortress. And that's sometimes where the parents come involved. Parents need to also make sure the kids don't have access to the guns, for example. And so I think our system is working well. We'll hopefully be having some new data on the SRO stuff. The part of the problem, pandemic data through all the data that we had for a few years is going to be messed up because the pandemic and remote learning makes a lot of things not comparable. But we monitor that stuff every year. And so we'll probably be having a new presentation in the next, the coming months on what are we seeing? We don't want to have disparities in who's getting kicked out of school, for example. Are we making sure that our programs don't make anything worse, for example? And I think we're going to have good data on that. That'll probably be out in a couple months. So.
All right, well, we have flown through these questions. I'm down to my last one, but I thought I'd take a quick pause, see if Robin or Mike had anything that they wanted to jump in on after hearing your answers. Robin?
Yeah, I was listening with interest to your ideas about the healthcare benefits for the employees. To what extent are you at the mercy of the unions for that?
A lot. And so people always say, why doesn't the school
open?
just do this? Well, it's because it's illegal. So we have federal state laws we got to follow. We have, if I remember correctly, 7 unions we have to negotiate with. That just takes time. It's not as efficient as some private business that the CEO can make a decision to make it happen. So there's a lot of process that happens. Now, the key is making sure the unions understand why we're trying to do that and get on board. And I think once they understand what it is I'm hoping that we'll do, why wouldn't they want it? Because if we lower their healthcare costs, that's more money in their pocket, and potentially that's money that can go to their salary. So one thing that people probably don't know is that Nebraska, when you control for demographics and age, is in the top 10 for healthcare costs. That's a problem. And if you look at out-of-pocket healthcare costs, that means what the teacher's paying out of their own personal checking account. Nebraska's number 7 for out-of-pocket costs, and there's reasons for that. And that's partly literally what I do for my day job with One Health Nebraska. I'm a chief medical officer of a clinic network of 22 clinics. We work to lower healthcare costs for Medicare and Blue Cross patients. Our last few budgets, we've been anywhere from 8 to 20% under budget. So we can do that. And at the same time, we actually make people healthier. So why wouldn't you want to be healthier and spend less money on healthcare if you could? And the answer is you can. And I'll literally be giving a presentation in a few weeks to Leadership Lincoln on how I would propose that we do that. So it can be done. Now, the thing is you have to have the school board or the various unions assent, which means meetings and explaining why and showing them how it will be done, because they don't want to have their healthcare costs cut. That's the problem that's happened in a lot of other businesses. I would say they save money by basically just shifting it on their employees. You don't want to do that. And so the way I'm proposing would not do that. It would literally cut their out-of-pocket costs, their premiums, and that money could either go to a higher income and take home pay, or could lower property taxes, or maybe both.
Very good.
All right, Mike, did you have anything? If you just, there you go.
No, I'm good. I think
Okay.
we're right on time.
All
I
right.
wouldn't say we're ahead or behind on time. We're doing fine.
So, Bob, the last question is this, you can take it anywhere you want. What didn't we ask you that you wish we would have?
Well, some things like, what does it take to be on a school board? Because in the future, I'm not always going to be on the school boards. Who needs to come next? I think people need to learn more about how big Lincoln Public Schools is actually. I mean, even as much time as I spent working with LPS previously and looking at a lot of LPS data, you just don't understand. You don't understand the scale of LPS till you work with it. It's 42,000 plus kids, 8,000 plus staff, 80 plus buildings. It's a very large organization. When LPS is in session, it's bigger than Grand Island, and it has its own security and food service and legal department and everything. And so it's literally like its own city in many ways. So if you're going to be on the board of something like that, you kind of need to have some background of those things. It's not something you do on a lark. So if you're going to run for school board, have you done comparable things at a smaller scale and worked your way up in the system? So for example, have you been on a board of directors before? Have you been on a community organization? Have you worked in Lincoln Public Schools on volunteer committees? And that I think anybody who runs for a school board should have been on multiple committees previously. Like actually the first time I met Lanny Boswell was because both he and I were on that parent committee that interviewed Steve Joel and his competitors, 13, 14 years ago. So you need some experience in this kind of thing. It's not, oh, my kid went to school, therefore I know how to be on a school board. So I think you really need to look at, do you actually have the skills to be a good school board member? You're hiring the executive team. You're setting the mission and vision of this organization. You're overseeing an almost $500 million a year budget, while making sure you don't run afoul of all these legal restrictions. My biggest surprise going to the school board actually was the legal orientation as a school board member. It's almost a whole day, because everything we have to do, everything from liability to contract law to FERPA and HIPAA and lots of other acronyms. And so half of our closed sessions are usually legal issues. And when you look at our school board meeting, there's 7 school board members, Paul Gaussman, and our legal counsel. Because there's just a lot of stuff you have to be aware of. A lot of those things that people throw out there in the chat of social media, it's not that well informed. You need to understand the backstories. And I wish when people, if you're going to come for school for public comment, understand that there's a lot of backstories. And so if you really want to be effective, that's usually not your first entry. That should be like your 4th or 5th step along the way. I keep trying to remind people that the school board meeting is not a meeting with the public, it's a meeting held in public. And you have a right to comment on an agenda item, but it's not a dialogue back and forth. And we have people that keep coming thinking this is a dialogue, and that's actually, no, it's a business meeting. Our founding fathers created a representative democracy. I represent District 6. So if you live in District 6, you should, and you're not getting what you think is happening, you should next then come to talk to me, for example, and I can help walk you through the system and say, well, here's how you change it. Just like these high school kids. We had 5 kids from Lincoln East. I met with them at the Harbor Coffee Shop, had a great discussion with them. Well, I think I actually taught them something, hopefully, but the good news is they had been taught something from their own teachers, I think, at least in their civics class. And they were really educated themselves. And I think they will probably be successful in what they're trying to do because they've done it the right way. So I think those are kind of, I guess, some backgrounds. I think not only did we have an epidemic of COVID the last few years, I think in many areas of the country, we've had an epidemic of bad governance. And people need to understand what governance is and what it means, not just something I just get to vote yes and no on stuff. The other thing is people don't understand one school board member actually doesn't have much power. I need a motion in a second to get it on the agenda, and I need 4 votes before it's going to happen. So it takes more than one person. It takes at least 4 of us to make a major policy change. And so realizing how that process works. I guess another misunderstanding during the whole the health education debate is people were thinking that because if the State Board of Education passed it, it would automatically happen. And I was telling people, no, it won't actually happen, because A, we don't have to adopt it. And B, for it to be adopted, it would have to first come through a committee. And honestly, and no, we were not going to take a position on it as a school board because it wasn't on the agenda yet. And so if you want to know what I think about it, you don't ask that question of public comment, you ask that personally. And a lot of people did talk to me, and I talked to them about why. To be quite honest with you, I would have voted against what was written because I think there are some things that need to be fixed. But on the other hand, 90% of it I think was good. And so as I talked with them, we had really good discussions, but that was a dialogue, not the monologue of a 3-minute school board or 5-minute school board comment. And so I wish people would dialogue more.
Just a follow-up question to that, because I get letters to the editor, and you probably know the nature of many of those. So, I mean, how much time it's easy to see the time you spend in a board meeting, but how much time do you spend in those meetings with parents, the students, things like that? How much preparation time does it take out of the public eye to be an effective board member?
Say for every hour of board meeting, there's probably 5 to 10 hours of pre-work, reading the agenda item, committee meetings, meeting with parent groups, meeting with other LPS folks. And so most people don't understand the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes that they never see. They see the school board meeting because public, due to open meeting acts, if there's more than 3 of us there, it has to be a public meeting. It has to be published, has to have run through all these requirements. And we try to remind people that's posted right on the wall. They say, why don't you do this? Well, because it's illegal. Read it on the wall there. But there's a lot of stuff we do individually, like, for example, I'm chair of the planning committee. We meet typically every 2 weeks, and sometimes more. The amount of planning that goes into building a school building is quite a bit more than you would think. One of the most interesting places to go is actually down to operations and see just the Gantt charts and the planning things and the maps that Scott has down there. It's like that takes a lot of planning, and I think it's a fascinating committee, and that's why I like being on it. but it takes a lot of work. And so most people don't see a lot of that work. And then, just meeting, like I tend to meet with constituents. I like to go to the Harbor Coffee Shop because it's in my neighborhood and down the street. It's a great coffee shop. That's often the best way to meet and talk to your public official. Just have that informal chat. Okay, what's the reason? What's the backstory? How do I get this changed in my school, for example, or at the district level? So.
All right, well, I guess we covered the last issue, which is what did you wish we'd ask that we didn't? So with that, I think we're all wrapped up. Robin, anything else for you or Mike?
No, thank you. Thank you for meeting with us, Bob.
All right,
Okay,
well,
welcome.
Bob, this was a successful first candidate interview of the 2023 city election season. So thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.
You too. Hope the rest goes well.
All right, thanks. Bye.